Welcome to another video from DIY Daily. Just put together a full step-by-step guide, just showing you how to replace the rear brake disc and pads on this 2021 Volvo XC40. Now this one's covered 31,000 miles. It's the first set of rear brakes it's had on it. It has got an electric handbrake on it, so we are going to be using a diagnostic machine to retract the electric motors on the calipers, so that to put it into maintenance mode so that we can replace the brakes. Now there is a manual way that you can do it as well. Once we get to that stage, I'll try and explain how you can do it manually, but because I've got a diagnostic machine, I'll usually always use that to do it, that's all. So we'll just show you, we've got some new Jurid rear brake disc and pads there. I'll just put a link in the description below to the parts and where you can get them all from, and I'll also list the torque settings for everything in there. I've just got the locking wheel nut tool out ready. Obviously we're going to be needing that to get the locking wheel nut off as well. But yeah, we'll just to start with, we'll get it on the ramp, get the wheels off, run you through everything a step at a time. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, just click on the red subscribe button below to make sure you don't miss out on any future content. Right, so we've now got the vehicle jacked up and ready to get the wheel off. Now as you can see, I'm using the 4-poster ramp, so we've just jacked it up in the centre there under some jacking points. But if you was doing this on the drive and you was just using the jack and you was doing one side at a time, or you was jacking it up and you was using axle stands, if you just look under the sill, you can just see there's a little arrow there, and basically that's the jacking point just there, so you can put your pad on there and jack it up on that point if you want to jack it up just on the sills there. But yeah, all we're going to do now, just got a little pair of pliers out ready just to get the little caps off there, and we're going to need a 19mm socket. We're going to need the locking wheel nut tool just to get one of them off, but just a 19mm socket to get the others off. So we'll get the wheel off now, then run you through everything a step at a time. Right, so now that we've got the wheel off, you can quite clearly see the brakes. I'll just show you quickly the reason that we're replacing these ones tonight. If you can just look at the brake pad there, you can see there's hardly any material left on that at all. And the reason that we're replacing the discs, I don't know quite how well you can see it on the video, but there's actually quite a big lip on the disc there. So sometimes you can get away with the brake discs, but there is quite a bit of a lip on there, so we're going to be replacing them at the same time tonight. Now the next step at this stage, we're going to be getting into the vehicle, hooking the diagnostic machine up and putting it into maintenance mode, which will basically retract the electric motor that's on the back of the caliper here, so that we can then wind the piston back to replace obviously the pads there. Now if you're going to be doing it the manual way, it is really a lot better if you can do it with the diagnostic machine, so you don't have to disturb the motor at all. But the manual way of doing it, basically the electric motor section here, if you just look, you've got an Allen key there, there's another Allen key around the other side. It's quite easy to access. You can undo both of them, just pull the motor off. You do need to be careful, there's a seal on there, you don't want to lose the seal. And once you've got that motor off, on the back of the caliper there's a little Allen key that you can wind all the way in. I think it'll be winding it in to reset it, and then once you've wound that in, you can then wind the caliper back. So, but it is a lot better really if you can do it with the diagnostic machine. That's how we're going to be doing it tonight. So we'll just crack on, get in the vehicle now, and just run you through that procedure of putting it in maintenance mode. Right, so just before we get in the car, one quick thing we are going to do is just pop the bonnet open, and all we're going to do is we've just got the brake fluid reservoir here. Now as we're going to be pushing the pistons back, we're just going to need a little bit of room in the reservoir, so that as we push them back, the fluid level is going to come up, so we don't really want no pressure to build up in here. So if you just take your cap off, it'll allow the level to just come up nicely without putting any pressure in there, that's all. So we'll just leave that off, ready for doing the job. Right, so all we've done now, just hooked up the diagnostic machine. You can just see the EOBD ports located under the driver's side there. We've just turned the ignition on to stage 2. Now we'll just run you through how to put it into maintenance mode. So we're using the snap-on machine tonight. Now usually I'm using the top-down machine, but the subscription's actually expired at the minute. So just while we sort that out, we're just going to use the snap-on machine tonight. Now it's pretty much the same procedure with most diagnostic machines, just the actual wording might be slightly different, that's all. I know on the top-down machine it has like a common functions or a special functions at the top that you can run through to access it straight away. but on this machine we need to go into the individual ECUs. So just run through this. Now this is just a little message. Some of these Volvos are equipped with a secure gateway. We'll just go into the ECUs now. So you can now see we're into the ABS ECU, and if we go down to functional tests, special functions, just see we've got parking brake service mode there, and you just get a little message just running you through what to do. Basically you've got to leave it in the state with ignition on there, and it does just tell you as well that you'll just see the word active on the dash. So if we just press continue, and we can just see now the position that it's in, and to enter the maintenance mode we can now go forwards. If we just press that, we can simply activate service mode. Obviously when we're done we'll deactivate service mode, so we just activate it, and just tell you there, you can just see that you need to actually release the parking brake before activating it. So if we just go inside and just check its release quickly, and just see the minute the parking brake's definitely on. So if we just turn it off, you can just see the lights now off. Then we can now forward and activate it into the mode. Now when it's doing it you can just hear it, so it's now winding the motor back in the actuator there. Just take a little while to do it. So now that that's done, the next thing we're going to need to do is just take out these two bolts on the back there. I'll just let you know what size they are in a minute. Just one at the top there, one at the bottom, one at the top there. And once the caliper's actually off, we do still need to manually wind the piston back as well, but we'll just show you that once we've got it off. So just for the caliper bolts, just going to need a 14mm spanner. So just see on this one, as it's quite new, the caliper bolts come out really nice and easily, but if they were a little bit tight, sometimes you might need to use a bigger spanner or a little pair of narrow nose mole grips just to grab the nut on the inside there. What we're going to do now is just leave the caliper out of the way. Now you just need to be careful. Obviously there's a wire for the motor there, and there's a flexi hose there, so you just need to gently pull it out of the way and rest it. Sometimes you might need to just sort of strap it up if it's dangling too tight on the wire or anything like that. But yeah, we'll just leave that out of the way now and support it. Right, so at this stage now, just before I do anything else, the first thing I'm going to do is just wind the piston back. And you can just see on the piston, you've just got a couple of little tabs in there. And you're just going to need a brake wind back tool. And now I'll put some links in the description below to a few different wind back tools. You can get some manual style ones. This is an air operated one. But all you need to do is just come with loads of different fittings on there. Just see, I've just put this one on there which suits this style caliper there. So you're just going to use that now just to wind the piston back, because you can't just, this style of piston, you can't just push it back. It needs twisting and pushing back at the same time there. So we're just going to wind that back, and the caliper's ready to sit aside. We'll get the carrier off and the brake pads out next. Right, so now the piston's all pushed back, sits right back there, and just situated the lobes just back in the position where they were, so it's sort of one facing up to the top and one to the bottom there. But at this stage now, we can sort of gently rest the caliper to the back while we undo the actual carrier and take the pads out. Now, the pads have just got these little spring clips in them there, so if you just take them out, or you can just pull the pads off with them. But we're going to need to get the carrier off next. And the carrier's just held on with these two bolts. We've got, just see one there at the top, another one there at the bottom, just 15mm bolts. So we'll undo them next, get the carrier off, get the pads out, then we'll be ready to give everything a good clean up before we refit them. That's your two 15mm bolts out. You will find these are quite tight to get out. They do have Loctite on them. So at this stage now, the next thing we need to do is give the caliper carrier a really good clean up. Now these are the sliders. Now it's really crucial to check your sliders, just make sure they're nice and free. If they're seized up, it's really important to get them freed off, get the boots off, get some grease in there and get them moving nicely again. But because this is quite a new vehicle, they're all nice and free, so there's no need on this one to actually strip the boots and grease them up. But it is really important now. The next thing we're going to do is just give these, where the actual pads run in there, we're going to give all that a really good clean up, ready for the new pads to go on. So just give that a quick scrub up now, then we'll go on, after that we'll go on to getting the brake disc off and swapping that over. Right, so just give that a really good clean up with a wire brush. I've used a bit of brake cleaner as well. Now, it's not too bad on this one with it being quite a new vehicle. Just a good scrub with a wire brush has been enough, but sometimes, depending on how bad it is, you might need to take the actual shims out, give it a good clean underneath as well. It's just really imperative to give it a really good clean up, that's all. But you can see that's got it nice and clean in there, so it's not going to be too bad on this one. All I'm going to do next, just use a little bit of ceramic paste, and you should always really use this rather than copper grease on your modern cars. And I'm just going to put a little bit of that just on the shims there, just ready for the new pads before we refit. So just give it a little bit of a coating in there, just on the areas where the pad's going to slide against, that's all. And then we'll run you through swapping the brake disc over. Right, so just to get the brake disc off, you can just see we've got a little torque screw there, and you're going to want a Torx 27 socket to get that off. Now again, because this is quite a new vehicle, that should come out quite easily, but there are a few different tools you can use to get them out if they're a bit tight. You can use like an impact driver where you'll knock it on the back with an hammer just to crack it off. And with these, a little bit of a trick, if they are a bit tight and it's not working, if you use a punch and just knock it in on the edge there, you can just tap it in quite firmly, and then you can sort of knock it in the direction to slacken it off, that's all. That'll usually work if not, but I'm pretty sure just this socket on the impact gun should undo this tonight. So now that's off. The brake disc should in theory be loose, but they do tend to get stuck on with a bit of corrosion there. So next thing, just give it a few firm whacks with an hammer just around the edge there. That should be enough just to crack it off. I see that, just one little knock and that just cracked it off, so that wasn't too bad to get off at all. What we're going to do now is just give all this hub a really good clean up with a wire brush again. Right, we're now ready to fit the new disc. Right, so that's the disc on. I've just nipped the screw up there. Now I don't normally torque these up. If you do want to torque it up properly, the correct torque setting for it is 10 Newton meters, which isn't a lot, just a bit of a nip with your ratchet. Obviously I'm fairly confident with an impact driver, so just give it a little bit of a buzz with the driver, that's all. But now that that's on, the next thing we're going to do is just put the carrier back on, and I'll run you through the torque setting once we've just run the bolts in gently by hand. Just before you put your carrier on, just check your bolts. You might just want to put another little bit of Loctite just on your main carrier bolts as well. So now that we've nipped the main carrier bolts up, the proper torque setting for them is 110 Newton meters. Now you're not going to be able to see the gauge while I'm doing it, but it does make a noise. Obviously I know the noise for this torque wrench once it hits the correct setting there. So, but yeah, you don't need to use a digital one, just a manual one will do. If you're not using a torque wrench, 110 Newton meters is quite a reasonable nip. Right, so at this stage now, carrier's all torqued up. Next thing we're going to do is put the brake pads into place. Now if you check your brake pads, you'll just see that one set of pads has got the two noggins there, and the other one's just got them to the outside. And just as a guide, you can always use your old brake pads to have a look at them. You can just see this one's been in the outside one, whereas the one with the two lobes there has been on the inside one, where you can see where the piston's made an imprint on it. So obviously if you just replicate that when you're swapping your pads over. And again, although we have just put a little bit of ceramic paste on there, we'll just put a little bit just on the lobes of the pads before we put them into place as well. So now that the pads are into place, next thing we can do is just put the two little spring clips back in as well. So you can just see now the pads are nicely situated. We've got the spring clips on there, and you can just see what they do. They just simply just spring it apart just to pull the pads away slightly from the disc, that's all. So all we're going to do at this stage now is just get the caliper mounted back on, just lightly wind the bolts in by hand, and then we'll run you through the torque setting for the caliper bolts as well. And with any set of decent brake pads, they do normally come with new bolts for the caliper as well. So the torque setting for the caliper bolts, you're going to want 40 Newton meters. Right, so that's it for this side. That's all back together. All I'm going to do now is just put the wheel on, just lightly run the wheel nuts in. I'm just going to go around the other side. I'll just speed through the other side, just fly through that. Obviously there's no point in showing you the procedure for the other side. Once we've done that, we'll just finish off torquing the wheels up, then I'll run you through the procedure once we've finished, just pumping the pedal out and just running you through finishing it off with the diagnostic machine on exiting the brake service mode, that's all. But yeah, we'll just crack on now, get the other side done. I didn't say on the other side, but with this style of brake pad, they've already got like an anti-rattle sort of plate on the back, so you'll see some people greasing on the back of here, but really a decent set of pads with the shim plate on there, you don't actually need to grease that section of it. Sometimes you'll see them with like a sticky pad on there and you can peel a section off and it'll stick itself back, but yeah, it is actually an anti-rattle pad that's already built onto them though. Right, so we've now got the other side done, the wheels all back on, we've just run them up lightly, we're just going to torque them up in a minute. I'm just going to lower the ramp slightly just to touch the wheels on the ground so that they can torque them up. Just before we do that, we're just going to go under the bonnet quick, just check that brake fluid, just make sure it ain't all come out the top, which it hasn't done, it's just pushed the level up a bit. Now once we've finished this job, and we've pumped the pedal out, you do want to be checking the level just to make sure that it's sort of not obviously miles above the max or anything like that, but you can just see where it is at the minute on this one. It's literally just above the max. As we pump the pedal out, that should set it about right, so I'll just put the cap back on there. So all we'll do now is just drop the ramp slightly and just torque the wheel up. Now the official torque settings for the wheels on these Volvos is actually done in 3 stages. I'll just try to show you this. It tells you to do it in a crisscross pattern, but stage 1 is basically 4 Newton meters, which is literally just nearly finger tight. Stage 2 is 50 Newton meters, and then stage 3 is 140 Newton meters. But as long as you're realistic and sensible about it, I mean, I'll just give these a light nip with a gum. I'm just going to run around them all now in a crisscross sort of pattern at 140 Newton meters. Once I've done it in a crisscross pattern, I'll just whip around them all just to make sure and just double check again. Right, so that's the wheels all torqued up now. I've dropped it off the ramp. Next thing I'm going to do is just get back in the vehicle, just get the diagnostic machine out. I'm just simply just going to give the brake pedal a few presses just to pump the piston out to start with, just till the pedal goes hard. And once we've done that, we're now going to go back into the diagnostic machine and see about exiting the service mode. So basically we're going to continue from there. We can then simply deactivate service mode. You'll then, I don't know if you can hear that, but you can hear the motors operating again. We can then continue from there. Exit. All we're going to do at this stage now is just simply, the handbrake's just come on there as well. I'm just going to start the vehicle now. And we're just simply going to check, just to start with, just operate the parking brake a few times just to make sure it goes on and off okay. As you can see, we've just released it there, just operated it. We can hear it's coming on. We'll do that about 3 times. Just while that's on, we'll just quickly go check that fluid level, then we can pop the bonnet down. That's it, we've now got no warning lights on the dash or anything. All I'm going to do now is give it a quick road test. Obviously on the road test, just make sure your brake pedal feels okay. I'm just going to give it a 3 or 4 mile run, that's all. Just make sure no faults come up with the handbrake. Once I get back, just check the handbrake a couple of times again. And that's it, that's the procedure for replacing the brakes. So, hope the video helped. If it did, give it a quick thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out some of the other content on there. If you've got an XC40, this is one that I do a bit of regular work on, so there might be some other videos in the future as well. But yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.